And so it is our pleasure to welcome in our studio Tomasz Pisula, foreign relations expert, member of the Atlantic Council. Thank you so much.
Hello, former member, to be exact. Thank you for having me.
Welcome.
Pleasure. So, as Sasha just mentioned, over the last few days especially, and over the last few weeks, starting at the beginning of April specifically, we've seen an increase of hybrid warfare tactics from Russia. The question is, how do we protect ourselves? How do we protect our governmental structures from these very elements of the hybrid warfare now that we are uncovering, for example, a network of spies from Russia?
They've always been around, and we've, I've been around for about 25 years doing this stuff, and there have always been examples of spy rings in place and so on. We should never let our guard down, basically, and use common sense, and basically share information that on need-to-know basis, where that information is needed, and well, tighten up the security clearance procedures. Obviously, now there's been problems with that. Judge Szmydt, who was deciding upon security clearance appeals, quite obviously wasn't really supervised or watched over by people who were supposed to do so. So, and such things will always happen. I mean, I dare to say that there's more of those things that never make the news, that never make the public opinion. The only people to know about them is the counterintelligence agencies, and chances are they won't be sharing with us, what they found.
Right, indeed. Now, you said, Tomasz, that you've been covering this for a while, looking at this. It's nothing new, but it seems to be that the frequency and at least the high-level incidents seem to be rising. I mean, hybrid attacks, let's explain that. I mean, we're looking at disinformation campaigns, different types of activities in cyber attacks, migration, weaponizing migration. Is the trajectory up, or is it just that we're now talking about this more, because they seem to be more in the news?
I agree with you. Chances are that we're talking about this because there's war. But, I remember about 10, 15 years ago, Polish journalists running around saying that we should never say that Nord Stream is the threat to Polish or Ukrainian or any other Central European countries' security, because it's only an economic project, and Russia never uses gas supplies, or Russia would never use petrol supplies to Europe as a weapon of political influence. And I remember highly influential Polish journalists actually saying that. It so happened that they used to study in Russia in 1970s and 1980s, but no one has ever, called BS on them. So I think those things were around. It's just right now we are a little more sensitive. And secondly, I think Russia might have been pushed to a situation where they actually have to call some of their assets back. And this is, the evacuation of Judge Szmydt seems to be like this exfiltration. Something sudden has happened. I mean, perhaps someone was just uncovering what this guy was up to. And that's why they kind of made a big deal out of it. But in reality, most of those things kind of go unnoticed, go under the radar. And in fact, when counterintelligence kind of comes across such ploys, they would rarely make the news because they are being used as a weapon, the other way. So if you find a spy, you try to flip him and kind of feed this information to your enemy. So this is what really usually happens.
So Sasha mentioned a number of different tactics used in hybrid warfare, especially now during this volatile time. The question is, since we have so many in the media, since there's so much news on it, do you think the part of the strategy of Russia is actually a panic element of releasing that, or is it more really about obtaining information?
Everything. There's long-term strategies, short-term strategies, there's open disinformation, there's sourcing information, I think what's happening right now is that Russia or Belarus is trying to heat up Polish partisan discourse. And I mean, we've just seen Prime Minister kind of fuming over what has happened. Well, his government is in power for 5 months now. I mean, they should have, if they were so active, they should have picked up this guy a little earlier. Anyway, it's not his fault. It's not the fault of the previous government. Such things happen. The question is whether we actually, as Poles, as Western democracies, whether we actually allow ourselves to be played by someone else. And obviously now Belarus is and Russia is playing, they are kind of supplying, feeding information into our public discourse. It usually happens that first the information kind of appears in obscure websites. You sometimes have fringe journalists kind of saying this and that. Then you see some, let's say, less known politicians talk about such things in parliament. And this is how kind of the so-called choirs are being developed. Mm-hmm. So at this moment, I'm quite sure we're dealing with one such operation that I think might have gone wrong, which is why Judge Szmydt was taken back to where he belongs, I guess. Yeah,
but it's not just, as we said, I mean, this incident in particular with Judge Szmydt in Poland. We've also had, I mean, Mr. Sikorski is just in Estonia there. He addressed this himself as well, how, trying to stem hybrid attacks, but very much about migration, right? Weaponizing migration. That's what Belarus has done. It comes out of Vladimir Putin's playbook. We've covered that. Poland has very much tried to stem that as much as it can. But nevertheless, I think one of the concerns is, I mean, some of these things seem to be more sinister than others, right? If we're looking at certain disinformation campaigns, I mean, it's all welded together. But I'm curious about particularly recently the jamming that we've seen. Emanating very much, it seems, from Kaliningrad. We've had these two Finnair commercial flights that have had to return, right? We've had the drone.
We've had a plane of Grand Chaps.
Exactly.
That was jammed as well.
Yeah.
Upon his visit.
So we always seem to be, if we're looking at that topic, we always seem to be sort of just reacting to it very softly. I mean, if we're looking at citizens, some are concerned. I mean, what more can we do? At which point can we also react in a way that we all feel safe, potentially?
As a citizen, I would say use common sense. In particular, do not rely entirely on technology. GPS signals will be jammed the very second war breaks out. And I'm sorry to say that, but people who hope to use Google Maps, planning their evacuation somewhere else, might not have a chance to use them because those signals will be jammed. And this is no secret. Polish armament companies who produce drones, they've been talking about this for many years now. So it's no secret. Also talking about this news that really makes public discourse. For example, you mentioned jamming GPS and problems with the planes. You know how many times NATO jets are being scrambled and intercepting Russian military planes flying over the NATO skies. How many times did that happen? On average in recent years, over 300 times per year. I remember doing a news story about this about 10 years ago. And the reason why they did it was not that the pilots are kind of loose cannons and they keep flying over Norway. No, the problem is that they go over Europe and then they eavesdrop on our communications. They want to hear us communicate with our jets and kind of decode the way we program and the way we organize possible anti-aircraft attacks. And they've been doing that for more than 10 years now.
So it's
I'm quite certain.
It's basically a continuous game of cat and mouse with Russia when it comes to those tactics.
It's a little more open now. And this is the benefit of it, but I would say there's nothing better than common sense.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. As you said, we have to be vigilant, and I think on part of it, what you're saying is also citizens have to also use common sense, but I think maps and to go back to the basics.
I was actually thinking about it when you said that the GPS may be jammed.
When was the last time you used a map for a commute?
That's a very good question.
But I think it's also, as you said, it's about resilience, right? Knowing what to do, how to react, behavior. I think this is really interesting.
As a journalist, when you make stories, when you encounter stories, how many other sources do you check, or do you just rely on one or two or three?
Of course. You check as many as you can to verify.
All right. Well, look, remaining resilient, not only in journalism, but I think also in this hybrid war tactic. But thanks so much for sharing insights there.
Thank you, sir.
Really interesting. Tomasz Pisula, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.